as a bitter, icy cold descends across the land. Obviously, it's too cold to go out to the pub, whatever. Families will be huddled across the country playing games, I'm sure, at home. Well, they probably won't be watching TV or something. But if they were, I'm going to contribute my own ideas for a game, which is, let's see how many U-turns Rishi Sunak can do in a defined period of time. The number of U-turns he's got through, given he's not been Prime Minister for very long, he does suck at the job. Let's just be honest, come on. Even if you're a Tory, it's not going well, is it? He's rubbish. Let's just have a little look at some of the U-turns. Numero 1. There was a solemn promise in the last Conservative manifesto to build 300,000 new homes a year. Now, this is quite important. I'll tell you why. Because there are over 1 million households officially languishing on social housing waiting lists. But actually, it's actually worse than that. According to one estimate 2 years ago, I doubt it's significantly improved since, it's actually 1.16 million households. Now, obviously, households contain multiple people. So it's estimated that's 3.8 million people in one of the richest countries on the face of the earth, unable to satisfy a very basic human need, having a nice, decent, affordable home of their own. They're languishing on social housing waiting lists because the government won't build the council housing we need, having flogged off the council housing stock. 4 in 10 of those old council properties are now let out by buy-to-let landlords, charging on average twice the rent of the social rent. Home ownership among young people has almost halved since the 1980s. And obviously a generation has been driven into a rip-off private rented sector with extortionate rents and a lack of security. So it's pretty important. So instead, what the PM, so-called, has done, has reached a so-called compromise with his backbenchers, which is about how local councils now will take into account the character of local communities when approving new housing projects. What happened before is you had mandatory targets, so they had to fulfill mandatory targets. The only way you're going to get 300,000 homes built a year is if you look at the housing needs of each part of the country and you impose a target that local council has to ensure is built. With that taken away, that's not going to happen, is it? Now, just to show I'm fair and reasonable, I've got a little clip of Keir Starmer making this point, and I'm going to show the clip without criticising the Labour leader, just as a little treat for you all.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party promised the country it would build 300,000 houses a year. This week, without asking a single voter, the Prime Minister broke that promise by scrapping mandatory targets. What changed?
Sorry about the kiss, in hindsight a little bit creepy, but I've been very well behaved. I haven't slagged him off. Let's see how well they do in office though. This is NIMBYism. This is, not in my backyard-ism on the part of Tories who don't believe in decent, affordable homes for the people of this country, and instead, basically, affluent homeowners with sharp elbows just get them to stop new homes being built. It's not great. Number 2, another U-turn, COP27. Now, that's a good thing. Wanted Rishi Sunak to go there. But the fact he didn't want to do it in the first place shows... he was trying to pander to climate denialists. He demoted 2 climate scientists. Now, given the UN in October declared there would be no credible pathway to limiting temperature rises globally to 1.5 centigrade above where they were before the Industrial Revolution, bear in mind with only 1 centigrade increase, we've seen climate disasters across the world, from more recently Puerto Rico to Pakistan. The more it goes up, it becomes a kind of spiral effect. What it means is more extreme weather. It means crop failures. It means famine. It means drought. It means the Arctic Circle going on fire. It means forest fires across the country. It means extreme heat waves. It means millions of people forced to leave their homes. Now, he went there, but only because he was shamed into doing so. It shows he's weak, which we'll keep talking about. Linked to that, number 3, onshore wind farms. Now, in his leadership campaign, Rishi Sunak pledged to relax the ban on onshore wind in England and instead focus on building more turbines offshore. Now, there was a backbench rebellion, I think a little bit cynical, this backbench rebellion. It was tabled by the former Cabinet Minister Simon Clarke, who was in the year below me at university. Knew him, I would say not well, because I avoided hanging out with him, but it's been a wild few years. Anyway, he tabled the amendment, as well as former Prime Minister Johnson and Truss. I wonder if they're trying to stir the pot a little bit. Now they say the government would give planning permission dependent on a project being able to demonstrate local support and appropriately address any impacts identified by the local community. They're still trying to make the bar high. What we need is onshore wind farms look cool, by the way, in my opinion. Don't understand the objection. The polling shows widespread public sympathy, including for having them built nearby. They're really cool. Got on a train, you see these wind farms. I find them quite soothing, quite relaxing. But in any case, we need to stop the climate emergency destroying human civilization, which is, I think, more of a priority than some weirdos who think wind farms are an eyesore. So we need to invest in this renewable energy. It creates skilled jobs, good, secure jobs, which is what we need. Linked to this again, number 4, fracking. So the Tories' 2019 election manifesto declared the ban on fracking. There would be a ban on fracking. and they had a little caveat, unless the science shows categorically it can be done safely. Now, in the leadership election, Rishi Sunak, he was pandering to the membership, he said yes if the local community support it. Now, again, a good thing, but he shouldn't have made a stupid promise in the first place, idiot. Sorry, that's a bit personal, but it is annoying. Now, polling shows minimal support for fracking in this country. There's a risk of earthquakes, threat of water contamination, the impact on nature, and there's also a distraction from renewable energy, which everything needs to be thrown into. But again, it just shows this guy will say one thing to an audience to get elected. I mean, it sounds familiar, but I've put a moratorium on making these criticisms of anybody else for this video. But he makes a promise, which he then obviously doesn't. Well, he's forced to U-turn because it was a stupid thing to promise. Just saying. Let's have a look at another U-turn. Oh yeah, he said he'd review all 2,400 EU laws on the statute book in his first 100 days. Now, he was just showing a bit of leg, obviously, to the leavers in the Tory membership. He ended up in a really bizarre situation where he campaigned for Brexit but was seen as kind of Remainery, whilst Liz Truss campaigned for Remain but was seen as sort of Brexity. Absolutely wild. What a world in which we live. So yeah, he said there'd be a new Brexit delivery department to review all of these, but he's U-turned on that. It's not going to create that department. I mean, again, waste of time doing all that. Thank you very much. Not something, obviously, I have any interest in. And would have been used for all sorts of nefarious things, I'm sure. But again, just stupid promises. Stupid promises by a weak politician. He also, I don't think we can forget just how ugly his leadership campaign was, where he was, for example, talking about referring people to counter-terror or counter-extremism legislation if they said bad things about British history. But number 6, linked to that, one of the worst things he came up with was to use cruise ships to put asylum seekers in while their claims are being processed. Now, this is just inhumane, but it's also in violation of the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. You can't just detain people claiming asylum. That is against international law, as well as British law for that matter. I know they don't care about these sorts of things. You know, they don't care about human rights or human rights being codified in law. But they have dropped this particular idea, which doesn't mean, obviously, that they're in any way supportive of the rights of refugees and migrants. They've closed down the safe legal routes to get here. They are obviously sending people to Rwanda. They're making, even though Britain is responsible, I'm afraid to say, for many of the terrible injustices that happen in the world, as well as other Western countries, in terms of the dictatorships that they back, in terms of the wars we've been complicit in, like Afghanistan, lots of Afghan refugees. I mean, just finally on linked to that, in terms of rights, the 7th one seems to be the Bill of Rights, which Dominic Raab came up with, which is a bill which has been Dominic Raab's pet project for absolutely donkey's years, and which is not something, which will be a Tory interpretation and will not safeguard many of the rights of people in this country. But in any case, it looks like he's going to U-turn on that as well. I think the point is, he's just a weak Prime Minister. He makes promises for political when he thinks it's politically opportune, and when he comes under pressure, he folds. He doesn't have a clear political direction, clearly, whatsoever. He's not someone with a clear, coherent vision for the country. He's all over the shop. He's like a compass that's just spinning around wildly. It's not looking good, is it? For them, for the Tories. I'm not going to say anything bad about the opposition. I'm just saying that they have, the Tories, destroyed themselves pretty comprehensively. And I think it's filtering through that Rishi Sunak is a weak, useless Prime Minister who doesn't have a clear political direction and just bends and folds willy-nilly. It was Tony Benn who once said there were two types of politicians. There is a weather vane, which just spins around, and there are signposts. And this guy is a weather vane. Truly, we have been blessed with wonderful politicians. What did we ever do to deserve this? Please like, subscribe. I'll see you soon.